Emerald City Comicon. It is day 2. Are you guys ready to get it on today? We have a pretty incredible lineup, starting with one of my favorite casts. Anybody like Boy Meets World? Please welcome to the stage the cast of Boy Meets World, starting with Ryder Strong, Will Friedle. Come on out, Will. Don't be shy. Danielle Fishel. Come on out, Danielle. Please welcome Ben Savage. Bonnie Bartlett. And last but not least, William Daniels. Mr. Daniels, you can sit wherever you like. You've earned that right. Are you guys excited for this panel? So am I. And I just got to start by asking, did you guys ever imagine 25, 26 years later, you would be sitting here filling up a room for this little show called Boy Meets World?
No.
No way. No.
It is happening.
You know, I think when the show ended in 2000, I think we all thought, well, that was that, and we'll get back to normal life. And like, I moved to New York, and I remember thinking, all right, now I won't get recognized in the streets anymore. Like my life will go back to like anonymous writer, and that's when Disney Channel started airing the episodes, and increasingly it seemed like the show was more popular than when it was on ABC. And suddenly I was getting recognized more than ever in my life. Like, what happened? It won't die.
Yeah.
And
It's one of
you know-
those shows that's literally been passed down, like generation,
Yeah.
like friends introduce it, you start
Yeah.
dating someone, you're like, oh, you have to watch Boy Meets World. You know, and it's had this life of its own, don't you guys think?
Yeah. You know, in all fairness, every season we thought, well, that's it.
yeah, that's true.
Like, we got picked up for 13, we finished the 13, and by 12, we were like, well, that's going to be it. And then they picked us up, and it's like, well, first, that was great meeting you guys. And then second season, oh, okay, well, that's done. I mean, we never thought we were going to keep going.
We also didn't have social media, so
Yeah.
like we didn't have any direct response from people watching. So for all 7 years, it just kind of felt like a show we filmed for our grandparents to watch.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. Ben, you're a younger brother yourself. What did you know about the show and the character before you signed on? And did you immediately like connect with the Corey character?
That was so many things at once. Wait, what did I know about the show?
Yeah, what was your first perception when you read the pilot? Let's start there.
I think you should ask those guys that question. That's a good question for them.
Will, you want to kick us off?
Let me tell you what Ben remembered about the first time he saw the pilot. Well, the thing you have to understand is the first time we all met Ben, I met Ben, he was 11. So, you know, little kid running around, and yeah. It was
I was pretty cute.
You were. It went away quick, but you were really cute. No, it was fun. It was one of those things where we came in and it kind of clicked almost instantly, and we all got along. I think the first time we all met was at a photo shoot.
yeah.
Where it was they had already done the pilot together. Danielle and I hadn't joined the show yet. And so it was Ben running around and Ryder and them coming up going, hi, I'm Ryder Strong. I went, what was your name again? I'm Ryder and I'm Ben. And we instantly all got along. We had to do a photo shoot where hi, I'm Bill, I'm Ben, and then you're instantly a family. So all of a sudden you're, all right, now hug each other, and we're doing the family shots, and it's like you're my dad, and we're meeting Rusty, and we're meeting Betsy, so you're kind of insta-family. So it was interesting how it all came together.
I remember, I don't know what, do you remember, Ben, that when I first started the show, it must have been right after you turned 13. And so we were talking and it was like, well, how old are you? And you were like, you're 13. And I, for whatever reason, did not believe you. I was like, no, you're not. You're like not, you're 12. And you were like, no, I'm 13. And I did not believe you. And that was like a big topic of conversation amongst us. How old are you?
I must have thought I was so cool.
So cool, because I was still 12. And you were like, I'm 13.
Huge deal.
Yeah.
And you were like, he is not old.
And I was like, he's not a teenager.
No way.
And no, he's not.
What
as
can you
old.
do at 13 that you can't do at 12?
Absolutely
It's
nothing.
not like
but
I can drive or.
no, but you really did think you were cool. You were like, oh, you're still 12?
What's that like? Say hello to 12,
Yeah.
nerd. Sorry. So the question was.
I think you've answered the question. You've done a good job.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
We're going to give you a thumbs up on that first one,
Thanks.
Ben.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
In all seriousness, though, Danielle and Ben, when did you guys sort of realize the end game for you two?
You mean as characters, like
Yes.
that we were?
In life,
Well,
I haven't yet.
the life end game is
It's
still
all
up in the
over.
air, but the characters, yes.
I don't know exactly. I think when Topanga was first brought on, she was only supposed to do one episode, maybe then a couple episodes, and then we ended up. It was not. It was all 7 seasons then after the first episode. And so I think pretty quickly in that first season, they at least realized this was definitely going to be a relationship that they played with in the younger years of his life. And I don't know exactly what the inspiration was to make it like this is going to be a forever long-term relationship that they're in till death. I don't know when that happened.
Ratings.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what made that happen.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that there really aren't many of those. Relationships you see on TV and in movies are usually passing, very fleeting things. It's still very rare to see people meet and decide they want to be together and then through trials and tribulations, no matter what comes their way, like really stick through it. So I'm proud to be a part of that kind of relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, we've loved watching it evolve and
Yeah.
through all the twists and turns.
Wait, I would like to say, everybody claps, but it also sets an impossible standard. Where I've heard people like, I didn't meet my Corey when I was 9. Like, well, of course not. It doesn't happen, really. So a lot of people are like, I'm trying to look for my Topanga. Like, okay, well, you don't have to find them in the sandbox. Or it was in the sandbox, and then
zoo,
And then in the
and then the 4th grade.
6th grade.
It kept changing when you guys actually met. We had
Ratings.
Yeah, ratings, exactly. Different little sisters. You had a brother and then a sister. They just bring on a
half
brother. when we
brother,
do the
and then I had a
storyline.
2 half brother. I
Yeah.
had 2 half. Well, Matt, and then then there was the
And then
one
the trailer
episode.
park guy.
Yeah.
was yeah. We had Topanga had an older sister, Nebula, for an episode.
I had 3 dads.
Three dads, 3 moms. Yeah.
You had 2 sisters.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had 2 sisters. Yeah. It just
I also had a sister stop the war, Lawrence.
Oh, that's right.
And Nebula.
And Nebula.
Nebula stopped the war, Lawrence. We saw her for 1 episode so that you could be interested in dating her, and then never again.
Never again. Yeah. That was the fun of our show. You'd read it and go like, oh, Sean's got another older brother, and he's an alcoholic. Oh, okay.
And he joined a cult.
And he joined a cult.
Yeah.
Good episode. Sweet.
And William, when did you realize that Mr. Feeny was going to have such an impact in the lives of these kids and become, like, I imagine, a character that people still come up to you today, teachers especially, and say, you inspired me?
Well, I found that rather surprising.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I took this show seriously. I stayed in my dressing room while they fooled around on stage. And when I thought it was safe to come out, I came out and tried to say my lines. And with them giggling and carrying on, they didn't take it very seriously. And I'm a serious actor.
Emmy award-winning. You know, when we started tweeting about this panel, Danielle, you tweeted something funny. You're like, why don't you ask how come we all haven't killed each other?
Yeah.
And you guys are one of those casts that we feel like we know. You know, you've been in our living rooms for this long, and Boy Meets World, Girl Meets World. How have you guys managed to keep the fun and sort of the innocence of the show even as out of character? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, this is going to be a long-winded answer that I will try to truncate as much as possible. I try to stay away from calling coworkers family as much as possible. I used to do it a lot because it's kind of the environment of being an actor and being on set is that they want you to feel like family because that obviously helps chemistry on screen. But I also think it can create a lot of problems where, you know, you tolerate things from family that maybe you shouldn't tolerate from coworkers. So I think sometimes there's like a bit of an illness mindset with calling coworkers family. But with that said, there are similarities to a family in the sense that it's not that we have known each other for 26 years or however long it's been now, and that we haven't at different times wanted to kill the other one, or that we haven't looked at each other and thought, why are you like this? We do that, and we know each other very well, and sometimes, you know, we go to dinner and we go, oh, here we go, we're gonna have this conversation again, and why? But in a similar way, we then part from those things and we think, don't need to see them again for a couple of months. But there's always then the minute you see each other, it's like no time has passed. There's literally an unbreakable connection that we have, that no matter how old we are, no matter what has gone on in our lives, we will be connected, and we have stories and a bond that very few other people can share. I don't have many people in my life I can look at and be like, hey, remember in 1993 when such and such happened and you said, and that they get it. So in that way, it is very much like family. It's that's how we've managed to not kill each other. We wanted to, we just don't do it.
Can I say something? You know, what I wanted to say was this is a very special group.
Her mic is not
This is
on.
my wife, Bonnie Bartlett.
Thank you. Okay. This is a very special group. This does not happen on your average television show. It really doesn't. I mean, they have all been very well parented, as I think one of them pointed out last night. None of their parents needed them to make a living for them, and so, which often has happened, especially in the past with child actors, and they have all been matured together, and but it's very rare. That's one of the reasons, has to be one of the reasons that the Boy Meets World thing has gone on for so long and will continue. It's because of these kids who are really good kids as well as good actors, you know? And they do all have a relationship, and it's wonderful to watch.
It is.
That's very sweet.
And now with Girl Meets World, these kids have kids. And so what was it like for you guys? You know, the show ended, and then, you know, 13, 14 years later, you get the call that, hey, we're doing this new series. What was it like to dust off those characters of Topanga and Corey and everyone else?
Well, in fairness, everyone on this panel, they were all on Girl Meets World. So I think I could speak for everyone that we were all very hesitant to kind of get back in the ring. I certainly know I was when they asked me to do Girl Meets World, but I think that you know, we had a nice time. It was certainly interesting because not many people get the opportunity to come back and revisit a character 13 years later and play that. But I guess it was an interesting experience. Yeah.
Will?
Thank you very much.
Down there on the end, Will, we watched Eric become a senator.
Yeah.
Unexpected.
Years ago, that would have been a crazy idea.
Yeah. What's up next for Eric?
I mean, what are the chances of that happening? No, the thing I remember most about Girl Meets World was I was sitting on the set, and I was with, I think, Ryder and Ben at the time, and we were watching the kids, and they were on the set, and we were standing 15 feet away or so, and one of us, and I honestly can't remember who, we looked and went, that's us. I mean, we were watching ourselves, learning the characters, learning each other, becoming friends with the same crew, like a lot of the same crew that we did Boy Meets World with, and a lot of the same cast members, and Ryder and Danielle were directing, and Ben was directing, and I was writing an episode. So we had different jobs, but we were then watching ourselves. It was a strange out-of-body experience. But it was a really interesting one to step back and go, that's us. Yeah. So the kids were phenomenal, and they fit right in with us, and our family grew, so that was kind of cool. Our coworkers grew.
You can call anyone you want family.
Okay, good.
It's entirely up to you.
My family grew, because I don't like my family, so that's why I call them all family. No, but it was wonderful. It was the next generation growing, and it was really cool.
And for the three of you that directed the episodes, and I know, Ryder, you directed with your brother, what was that like to get behind the camera?
It was amazing. It was, the Girl Meets World sort of coincided with right when I had decided to stop acting. So I was like, oh, I just don't want to do this. It's kind of like, I don't want to act anymore, let alone go back and play the exact same character. But, we sort of worked out. I was like, well, let me try directing an episode. And like Will was saying, it was sort of like time travel. We get back, and it was like the same writing staff. The kids had the same studio teacher that we did. So, like,
that's amazing.
Their backstage classroom was, like, adorned with the exact same educational posters we grew up with. And the same guy, Wesley Staples, sitting there teaching them. And, he's like an old friend. It was our teacher. And so I looked at it as an opportunity to sort of be there for them the way that directors and our teachers and our producers had been there for us. And I remember the conversations, about acting, and not only that, but about just being famous and, dealing with the world and dealing with a show like this. And I really wanted to get in there with the kids and have fun, and make sure that it was a safe space to invent and discover acting, because there's a lot of pressure, and in fact, the pressure seemed much higher on them because of social media. There was a much more Insta fame, and then also, and the feedback of that. And then also just the pressure of Boy Meets World having already been a thing. When we were doing it, it was brand new, and we could sort of define it on our own terms, whereas they were stepping into something that was sort of predefined for them. And so, what my brother and I spent a lot of time doing, we would take whole rehearsal days and just sit with the kids and be like, what kind of actor do you want to be? What do you think about acting? What does acting mean to you? And those conversations were really fun. Hopefully they were, valuable for the kids, but they were really fun for me and my brother, and just to engage with them on that level. That was the best part. I really loved working on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Danielle and Ben, from the director's point of view, did you have any advice for the kids? Were you sort of in the same position of feeling like you were watching yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially with, the girls who were exactly the same age I was when, we started. Rowan was 11, Sabrina, I think, was 13. I was 12, so what I just said was a complete lie. I was neither one of those two ages. But I was right in the middle of them. And, but yeah.
I was 13.
You'll never let me forget it. But yeah, like Ryder said, I mean, there are a lot of different styles of directing. And one certain style of directing is to not really do a whole lot of explaining. It tends to be easy for directors who've been doing it for a very long time, especially, to kind of come in and just tell the person you're directing where to stand, but not necessarily why to stand there, or tell them, which way to open up to speak to another character, but not really say why you want them to do that. And, they were really green. This was kind of the first major project they were working on, and we would see them kind of do what they were being told, but also behind the eyes being like, I'll do it, but I don't know why. And so being able to get in there and say, we need you to do this because that's your camera. When you turn and you talk to that person, you're over there on this camera, and to see them go, oh, to see the light behind their eyes start clicking, not just in finding motivation as an actor, but also being open for camera. Like, those are the things that I love, because I think of, especially when you're that age and you're starting on a Disney show, this is 101. Like, everything you learn on these shows, you will take with you for the rest of your career. And I know I remember those first experiences, the first several years of Boy Meets World, when I just was a sponge and I was learning so much. I have remembered those situations on every job I've gone on to do. And so being able to know that, like, you know, maybe I'm helping to make a memory that's going to stick with this child for the rest of their career was really impactful to me.
That's amazing. It's so great to hear that that perspective was passed on and those kids are having the same experience you guys had, which sounds very positive. We're going to take questions, so line up at the mics in the aisles.
Oh, yes, there's lights.
Yes, there's mics. And we'll get through as many people as possible. And while they're lining up, I wanted to ask you, William, you have such a prolific career. What role are you recognized most for?
Probably John Adams. In 1776.
Wonderful. Hi.
Hi, I'm Alex from Washington. I'd love to hear more about writing or working on very special episodes because they carried more than just on Boy Meets World and have existed for so long, and Boy Meets World actually had a lot of really solid ones, but they're always viewed as being like, oh, this isn't a normal episode. This is one about domestic abuse. Oh, this is the Me Too episode. Okay. Sean's joining a cult. Cool. Okay. Fun.
That was a
So-
special episode.
It was a special episode.
Very special.
So, sort of through all of that, did you approach it differently when you got the script? Did you know that this felt different? Sort of, what was the process of sort of working through and filming those episodes?
That's a great question. Who wants to tackle that first?
Yeah.
Let's say Ryder.
Ryder?
You got most of the
I
very
got most of
special
the very
episodes,
special
yeah.
episodes. I have to say, I think I was always excited. Turn off the light on you. I can't see you, Alex.
I'm sorry.
It was always it was an acting challenge. That's the way I looked at it. You know, I mean, the cult episode
He's
is
still there.
yeah. The cold episode is a good example of just it's kind of insane, but there's like I'm kind of acting my ass off in the end of that episode. It's like this, you know, I'm crying. Jonathan Turner's dying in front of me. I think it's like I find God. Like it's so. And I remember, you know, I was 15.
That's right, that was all one
It's all one
episode.
episode. I was like 15 or 16, I think, and I just
Okay.
remember being like, you know, because I think at the time I was, you know, feeling like, oh, I'm on this comedy show, but I want to do more drama, and I think Michael Jacobs knew that, and he wrote to that, and he kept creating stuff to sort of let me do this dramatic stuff, and then he'd go back to, you know, Will running for office or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It seems a little unbalanced, but in a weird way, I think that's why the show has lasted so long. Is that some of those really dramatic moments, those melodramatic moments. I mean, for instance, you know, obviously all the Sean stuff, but also the Corey Topanga stuff was really heavy. You know, I mean, they were, when she moves away and he's crying and you know, it's like a. It's something that does not happen or didn't happen typically on a 90s sitcom. I don't know. I always enjoyed those moments. You know, and they in retrospect they seem a little bonkers, but they kind of made sense to us. I don't know. Did we think it was weird at the time?
I don't think so, but I also, you guys will know better than I do, but I don't think any of our episodes actually started out by saying,
This is a very.
a very special episode, but a lot of other shows did.
That was an 80s.
So
thing.
I think they kind of like snuck up on you.
Yeah.
You'd just be sitting down to watch the show the same way you would every week, and all of a sudden you'd be like, whoa,
Get a message.
I really got this message this week. It wasn't like they warned you ahead of time, like, buckle in, we've got a special thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is good. I think it should be done that way more often.
I had a very different experience because they would always have the very special episodes. And then it would be like, and now here's Eric sneezing the lottery numbers. So it was two different shows. It really was like Sean deals with a tragedy, Eric stuck in a couch. So that was, they really had, it was two completely different things. I always saw it as kind of like this play going on, and then I came out as like the vaudeville guy playing piano, like, hey, who's from out of town? Who had a great time? All right, now back to the show. And then I'm slowly brought off. So
It was good though. It's like a release valve. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It was really
it
beneficial.
was just,
yeah.
it was the, I never had the very special kind of episode. I mean, not getting into college, I guess, was one, but mostly I was the comic relief guy. Tommy was good,
Tommy
yeah.
was great, yeah.
Tommy was good. So that was, I always tell people that what they don't know is when you saw an episode that was all about Eric, and it was like, Eric had the A story, and there was something kind of dramatic, that didn't mean like, you know, Will, it's time for your episode. It meant Ben had tests.
Ben was in finals.
So he was in finals or had the SATs or something. So it was like, it's Will's episode now because Ben's studying biology. Like, oh, okay, great. I'm adopting a kid because Ben's trying to get into college. All right, great.
That's awesome. Thank you for kicking us off
you
with
so
that
much.
great
Thank you.
question. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Mika, and I'm from here, Seattle. I grew up watching you guys, of course, and appreciate all of you. And I actually became a special education teacher. I work with grades 4th, 5th, and 6th. And so my question is for William. Did you realize that how powerful your character was able to inspire other people to be able to want to work with children?
Did you realize your character was inspiring to other people to work with children?
Yeah, I didn't hear her.
Did you realize that your character was inspiring Did you realize your character was inspiring and that you inspired teachers to go become teachers?
No. At the time, you know, in any kind of theatrical endeavor, you don't know what you've got until you run it into an audience, and you start hearing that laughter, and you think, oh, well, we've got something here. So what was the question?
You're an inspiration.
Yeah,
I'm an
I-
inspiration?
You're an
I can
inspiration.
answer that. No, I can answer that for him. He didn't expect it. None of us expected it. The mail is unbelievable about people who have become teachers and how he's gotten families through tragedies. It's amazing. It's just amazing. And I keep saying, yeah, Michael Jacobs wrote it. Bill just delivered it, you know. But it has been amazing, and we're astounded. I'm particularly astounded. And he kind of brushes it off. But I think it's amazing. I think it's so wonderful. To be able to affect somebody's life, hey, that's a great thing. That's really a great thing. And they've all affected hundreds and thousands of lives all over Germany. We get it from everywhere.
Definitely Germany.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely, Julia.
And thank you for being a teacher. We need more of them.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name's Aaron. Nice to meet you guys. This is awesome. Nowadays in TV shows, there are crossovers everywhere. I was wondering with you guys, if you could have your cast and your characters cross over into any show, like
In history?
in history, like Eric's on Eric's in House of Cards, Topanga works at Dunder Mifflin. Like, what show would you?
Are you going to say MASH?
I am going to say MASH.
I knew you were going to say
You
that.
and,
What did he say?
I don't know, but Eric,
and
for some
Hawkeye.
reason at the 4077, I'm really happy to be there.
You've been great in that. You
That'd be
would
my
have been
pick.
great in that.
Thank you.
I'd love it if Sean joined Knight Rider.
Oh, yeah.
Sean and Kit, right? Then Mr. Feeny's still around.
Yeah. that'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
Fighting crime.
I'm gonna pick a current show, and I would love to see our entire cast dropped in The Good Place.
Oh, cool.
That's a good one.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
That's really good. Thank
That'd
you.
be cool.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
question.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Caitlin from Yakima, Washington. I was just wondering, as a member of the Geneva Detention Convention, what was some of your favorite quotes or scenes when you were shooting that episode? The special Halloween.
That was a holiday.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I was like,
And it was like quotes from that episode. We did 154. I don't know.
The best line from that, well, I know there's so many weird lines from that show, but the pencil
Yes.
will always
You'll
know he
always
was that
remember
tall.
that is
oh
the best.
Yeah.
my God.
that I also loved. I'll get as sick as you can actually get without actually dying. Yeah. That was
Very clever.
That was very clever, and one that if you were one age, you didn't get it all. If you're another age, you kind of got. If you're an adult, you went, I can't believe they just said that. So yeah, that was great. Yeah.
Thank you. from both series, do you guys have a favorite episode? I mean, I know it's really hard to narrow down to one, but is there one that stands out, like, in particular for, you know, filming was really funny, or you liked the material?
That one.
Yeah, the Halloween episode.
Halloween episode, yeah.
What is it? And then there was Sean.
then there was Sean,
That was by far the most fun to film,
Agreed.
I think. As far as like a really cool story that holds up, I think Chick Like Me is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's
And like, you know, turned out to be a little prophetic in a lot of ways. And it was, you know, it was really fun and hilarious to shoot too. Yeah, so.
Ben does too. Ben has a favorite episode.
I do?
Yes.
Chick Like Me, someone came up to me and showed me a tattoo they got of me as a girl. Which I have a picture of. It's great. That wasn't my favorite episode, but I think, in terms of just like impact, again, I said this yesterday, but our final episode that we shot for me was very difficult. But I suppose it was like someone saying to all of us, you know, you're no longer kids anymore and you have to grow up and be adults. And no one wants to hear that. So I just remember filming that episode, and I'll just always remember that normally when you're doing a sitcom, you do 2 or 3 takes of every scene.
Or sometimes 12.
Or sometimes 12.
13.
If Will's in the scene, it's a lot. But you film it again and again to make sure you get it perfectly. And the day that we were filming that, you know, we all knew it was the last episode, and it was the last scene, and it was the last shot. And so I was getting ready that night, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a big night, and I can't believe it's going to happen. And then we all did this scene in the classroom, and it was a beautiful scene. And of course, in my own head, I was like, I probably could have gotten that line better. I probably could have done that better. I should have hugged Bill tighter. I don't know. But then they said cut, and they all looked at us and like, okay, we're done. We got it. And I remember just thinking, if you ever had like kind of a visual image of like falling down a mountain and you want to climb back up, and I remember thinking how vividly I said, I don't want this to end. I don't want this to be it. And that was it. Or so I thought, because now here we're in Seattle talking about it. But if you could ever kind of hang a lantern on a defining moment in your life, that would certainly be one for me.
Absolutely.
Nice. I'd like to say that I love Boy Meets World. I often don't overtly brag about Boy Meets World, but I am, as these guys know, I love television. I'm a television addict. I am a huge sitcom fan, and I would rank that last episode up there as one of the best last episodes of any show in the history of television.
Absolutely. Hi.
I also want to say, back to the first gentleman who was asking the very special episodes, I kind of reject the premise because it almost puts us into a category, whereas I think that we put our heart and souls into every episode. And so, to me, every episode was special. I mean, sure, there were certain parts and scenes and episodes that stood out more. And I also think from an audience perspective, you never know what line you're going to say or what joke you're going to deliver that's going to have an impact with your audience. So to this day, you know, I have people coming up to me saying, I love that line that you did in that episode. Because to them, that was special. And to them, that meant something. So I don't really understand when people say, oh, the very special episode. They were all special. I think that anytime you're an actor and you put your heart and soul into something, it's special. And also, you never know what's going to resonate with the audience. Yeah. That's all.
Thank you.
Oi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Paul from Vancouver, Washington, and I was actually in college studying to become a teacher when I was watching the show, and was so inspired by Mr. Feeny and just really wanted to be that kind of educator. And I was wondering how much of Mr. Feeny is in Mr. Daniels for everyone.
Well, you know, that's a good question, because when the part came along and the name was Mr. Feeny, I thought it was kind of funny, you know. So I said no. And so the producer asked if I'd come and see him. And why did you say no? I said, well, you know, that name is funny, and I don't want to make fun of American teachers. They're terribly important to us, and they're underpaid. And so he said to me, Bill, I'll tell you what, we're not going to make fun of Mr. Feeny. I'm basing it on a teacher that I had in high school and who I based the show on, and I had a great deal of respect for him, and I will treat this role the same way. So I said, oh, okay. And that's the way it worked out.
Thank you. We're all glad it worked out that way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name's Anne. I'm from Mount Vernon, Washington, and I would love for you to talk about the change in Eric from the beginning of the show to the end.
Did he change?
A little bit.
He got smarter.
Yeah, that's what there's a number of theories for the changes in Eric. Some of them make sense, some of them are very fantastic, but I think they're all wonderful. Here are the theories that they have. One of them is that the show takes place through the eyes of Corey Matthews, who's the younger brother. So when he's really young, he sees his brother as this amazing, cool, hip guy, and the older he gets, the more of a goofball he kind of sees him as because he's growing up. Interesting theory, probably not all that accurate. The one I like is that you can pinpoint Eric turning to Eric. There's a scene where he's trapped in a car with a woman and it's snowing, and he starts repeatedly slamming his head against the car window. Instantly after that, he kind of changes. So some people say it's more of a comedy thing. I prefer the subdural hematoma route. So I think a slow bleed on the brain is what kind of explains
Very good.
how Eric Matthews changed.
It all makes
Yeah.
sense now.
Yeah, it makes sense,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Doesn't it? Yes.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Chris. I'm from Alaska. And
Wow.
Nice.
Alaska.
What part of
my
Alaska?
question- What's that?
What part of Alaska?
Anchorage.
Nice.
Ben went on a cruise to Alaska once.
Give me a call. I'll show you
She's
the
not wrong,
places
I did.
around.
Yeah.
That's fun.
I caught a fish in Ketchikan. A salmon. I was the only one on the fishing expedition. Everyone hated me. Everyone paid all this money to catch a fish, and I got it.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap.
That's
No,
awesome.
it's not.
So my question kind of starts before my wife would marry me, I had to watch all the episodes.
Of course.
I watched a few when I was a kid.
Right.
And also, I needed to understand her jokes. Feeny didn't make sense. There's all kinds
Because
of
she
things.
wasn't saying it right.
Yeah, exactly. You say the name, you don't want to make fun of it. That was you. Yeah, there you go. Everybody wants you to say it.
I can't. It's not mine anymore. It belongs to the girls on Girl Meets World. You got to get them to say it.
Where are they? Bring them out.
Sorry. Pass the torch.
So the reason it was such a big deal to her, as well as everybody else, is Mr. Feeny, I feel like, was a lot of the base of how the show moved. It always kind of ended with him. My wife even has her Mr. Feeny she refers to from when she was in high school, regularly refers to him, was the sage advice deliverer. So with everything that he delivered and being around him, he said he was trying to take that role of the teacher. Were you as affected specifically by him? You're talking about how each of you affected each other. Did you feel the same from him as we all did?
From him, meaning you mean Bill? Did we feel as affected by Bill?
Because like you said, it kind of family, coworkers, it blends together. Did you take as a family the advice? Does that make sense? The advice from Mr. Feeny? Because as an adult, I still think of some of the things he said. So,
Sure.
Do you understand? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you feel the same
I
way
don't
as the
know.
audience?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, the audience,
Was
obviously.
he as big a deal for you as he was for us?
Yeah, on the show, did you guys recognize and get the impact of the wisdom?
I personally don't think I necessarily took it in while we were filming it. I think about it more now as an adult and look back and go, wow, that's some of those pieces of advice are like still so pertinent and really like special and important, and it's amazing that we were giving them to kids at such a young age without talking down to them. I think that's amazing, but I don't think I realized it while we were shooting as much. And then personally, obviously, as Bill so eloquently talked about us earlier, we were, young, and although we were professional-ish, we were 11, 12, 13. We would laugh, we would get the giggles, and Bill is a consummate professional who took his job very seriously and would come in and have spent hours memorizing his lines and would be sitting there repeating them to himself, and all of us were looking around like, and then they'd be like, roll, and we're like, then we'd just pop into it, and he'd be like, oh, you're making me like lose my focus. So I think he kept to himself a lot while we shot the show because we were rather annoying.
I actually had a slightly different experience because I was a little older than these guys. I was 16, 17. And by the time Michael Jacobs realized how wonderful on-screen Eric and Mr. Feeny were together, Bill and I ended up working together quite a bit. And I always tell people, my father taught me how to be a man. William Daniels taught me how to be a professional. It didn't, we've talked about this. It didn't matter that you were 11 or you were 12 years old. You were a professional actor. You're there to do a job. And you take it very seriously. He never missed a mark. He knew all of his lines. He was never late in 7 years that we worked. And I went off to do other shows, and I'd work with other actors where your call time is 8 a.m., and they're rolling in 9:15, 9:30, and I would be there half an hour early, and directors and producers would come up and go, it's really nice that you're here early. I'm just wondering where you got this work ethic. And I go, William Daniels, and they go, I know it. I mean, it's important. It is not a thing. You're not joking around. We still had fun on the set. We all did. We were enjoying ourselves and getting the giggles and doing all that stuff, but we were all still very professional, and we got that from Bill. So I learned some from Mr. Feeny. I learned a lot from William Daniels.
Thank you.
All right, and if you do the Knight Rider crossover, Mr. Feeny needs to be the voice.
Yep.
Hi.
Hi, my name is David. I'm from Shoreline. My question is, going all the way back to the beginning, do any of you have a favorite story about the curse of the other best friend?
Tell about the chair.
Yeah, all right. So if you go back to the first season, I think it's about 7 episodes or 8 episodes, they were always trying to have another best friend. So it was going to be Corey and his 2 best friends. So the pilot episode, I think I had 2 lines. Sean was just the sort of one of the other kids. And we had this cafeteria set with a table, and Ben would sit here, and I would sit there, and then this corner seat would be the other kid. Invariably, they would be gone the next week, and a new kid would come in, to the point where we started calling it the death chair. And halfway through, probably the 5th or 6th time, they fired the kid halfway through the week, and gave me all of his lines. And we were kind of like freaked out. I remember showing up for work, and suddenly I had to actually act and be a part of this show where I had always been a small part. But that was also Danielle's first episode, I believe. It was Corey's Alternative Friends, and I think that was the episode that kind of solidified what the show was going to be about. Because until then, the show was trying to straddle this line between like family life and school life, and which one is going to sort of guide Corey. And I think introducing Topanga and having Sean become an actual presence on the show, it sort of it defined what the school life was going to be about, and we all felt it. Like, I remember it was like, oh, this is the show. And then also I believe that was our first show to get a 24 share, which means would be huge, but back then was like good enough ratings to stay on the air. So yeah, it sort of all came together, but yeah, we never found that third friend.
Well, I remember Michael telling me once, Michael Jacobs, who created the show, told me that when he was pitching the show, he went in to say, they said, we want another family sitcom, and he said, okay, well, look at all the shows on the air now, Growing Pains, all that stuff. They're all from the point of view of the older brother. I want to do that exact same show from the point of view of the younger brother. And so they were trying to, as Ryder said, figure out the balance of school and work. And then when Danielle came in and everything, and Ryder finally was given the one role of, you're just the friend. That's really where we all hit our stride, I think. Yeah. So yeah, it was great.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Carrie from Vancouver, Washington. I've got a question for Daniel. Yes. How are you feeling today? And how would you take aspects of the show in the forward for your children that their child that you're going to have here soon?
Good question. I'm feeling very pregnant. Thank you very much. We're very excited. Sometimes I have a hard time breathing for absolutely no reason. Just there's not enough room. My lungs don't have enough room anymore. I was recently asked this question, like lessons from the show that I'll take forward for my kid. And normally I would find that then I would kind of need to like come up with some answer, regardless of whether it was true or not. But in this case, it's absolutely true. That like the lesson of Boy Meets World, one of the big takeaways from it was that you don't have to be blood to be family. And I think that's just so, I have noticed that in my personal life so much, that the people I have surrounded myself with, there have been times when I have been surrounded with people that are better than I am, and that always makes me better. I always want to strive to do better and to, be the best person that I can be. And then there have been times in my life where I've surrounded myself with people that bring me down, that make me not as good of a person as I can be. And most of the time, those people are not family members. They're people that I've chosen to surround myself with. And so I definitely want to teach my kids the importance of the people you choose to surround yourself with, and what a big impact they can have. And then from Girl Meets World, the big takeaway was that people change people. And while it's a similar concept, it's also very different I think of that one as being from the perspective of how you can impact other people and how the influence you can have in somebody else's life, and whether you want to look back and say, I take credit for helping this person be the best, most positive, and feel loved, or I was the person who went online and bullied somebody else or made some negative comment, or sat behind my keyboard and brought somebody else down in order to make myself feel good. So there are, from each show, I have very special lessons that I look forward to teaching my own child.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Morgan. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I just wanted to start out by saying I'm a teacher too. Yay!
Yeah.
Growing up, I
She's a
watched Boy
teacher?
Meets World, and William Daniel made me want to be a teacher. And then Girl Meets World came about when I was just starting to teach. So Ben, you as a teacher kind of brought me back to what are the important things I'm going to be teaching my students at the core, not just the curriculum.
Right.
So I wanted to really pitch that because I don't
Thank
think
you.
that the reboot gets enough credit sometimes.
That's very nice to hear.
So my question is, do you guys remember the Men Are Idiots hot stuff dance, and what did that rehearsal look like?
Remember what?
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, right. No.
I don't remember.
I don't remember it at all. I remember distinctly that Matt Lawrence was really good.
He was amazing because he could actually dance.
Because he could actually dance.
Well, you were great too. Like you came out of the yes.
Did I really?
Yes, you were. Will didn't have to rehearse. I think because you looked at it as physical comedy, which you can do very well.
Yeah.
You didn't look at it as dancing. You were just like, how do I make this funny? And
Right.
just nailed it. I remember being very nervous. I'm like the worst dancer in the world.
You know what I do remember? I remember Bill adding like this move. Do you remember that? But they brought in like a dance coordinator,
Yeah.
and we went to a whole nother
Separate
stage that was
stage.
empty, and kept playing the music, and there's some poor man there trying to teach us 6
5,
months how to
6,
dance.
7.
Yeah.
It was
It
like
was
that.
yeah.
Super fun.
It was a lot of fun and a little crazy. Yeah.
They're being bashful. We were doing it backstage.
Yeah. Well,
We usually do. That was a joke. That was a joke.
Thank you.
You guys, they took me seriously. 5, 6.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi.
How's it going? My name is Landon.
Great. Great. Little hungry.
My name is Landon from the Bay Area. I wanted to know, over the years, and I know, Ryder, you mentioned that you had mentioned to the creators and the writers that you wanted to go in more of a serious direction, so they gave you some of those kind of parts. Over the years, even if it's an idea that just lived in your head or that you actually pitched to the room, is there anything that you wanted your character to do, even for an episode, or a true direction you wanted it to take?
I remember one specifically that worked, which was we were probably 7 or 8 episodes into the show, and I went up to Michael Jacobs and I said, I want to work with William Daniels, because Eric and Mr. Feeny hadn't been in the scene together. And so they wrote an episode where Kerry Russell comes in and as Mr. Feeny's niece. And we got to work together for the first time ever. It was also my first ever on-screen kiss, with Carrie Russell, and I remember our teeth bumped, and I was mortified. I was like, oh my God, I broke it. I ruined the kiss. But it was important for me because it also let me know that the writers were listening to us already, where I had walked in and I said, look, I would really like to work with them, and that, got a whole episode out of it, so that was cool.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that it wasn't, for some of us, it wasn't so much about trying something to make sure it was in the show, but more about deflecting and protecting our characters, how we saw them. So if there was lines or storylines or plots that any of us weren't passionate about or didn't agree with, I think we would certainly fight for that. So to me, it wasn't about fighting to make sure something was in, but it was, especially when it got to Girl Meets World, it was more about protecting the characters and making sure that we kept certain things out in order to keep the integrity of the show.
I was apparently much more shallow. I just wanted to cut my hair. Really, really, really wanted a haircut is basically what I cared about.
Thank you. Great question. Thanks. Hi.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle. I'm from New Jersey. And my question is actually for William Daniels. So the rest of the cast has said that your favorite episode was the Halloween or the Scream episode. And then, Ben, you loved the last episode, which I think everyone loves both those episodes. They're wonderful. But something tells me William Daniels didn't love the Halloween one maybe as much as you guys did. He kind of died in that, which was horrifying. So, William Daniels, what was your favorite episode or maybe moment that they wrote for you in acting in Boy Meets World?
Did you have a favorite episode or scene of the series?
Oh, the last one. Yeah. You didn't have to tell me that.
I don't know.
My wife.
You know what he used to say on the set of St. Elsewhere? He would say things like, shall we take a 20-minute break while Miss Bartlett learns her lines?
Yes. That's awesome.
Oh, he's mean.
Yeah. Well, there were a number of episodes, but of course we ran for what, 5, 6 seasons?
7.
So the one that 7?
7. They were all memorable for you.
My time flies. Anyway, so I'm inclined to remember the last scene where the children leave the room. And, he's been a bit of a tough nut with them sometimes. So when they left the room, I looked around at the empty chairs and I said, and I love you all. And that meant a lot to me, to the way to end my part of the show. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, it meant a lot to us too, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Laurel. I was wondering about, Boy Meets World had a lot of Easter eggs, and Girl Meets Worlds were less subtle.
You think?
That's just how that worked. But I'm wondering about where the Easter eggs were coming from, and as they developed over the course of both shows, from John Adams High to John Quincy Adams, in references to William Daniels' career, and then going back and forth on that, and was that coming from you guys, from the writers, and how they came about? Because I enjoy Easter eggs and those little snippets that very few people will notice.
Was that a question?
Any insight? And did any of you guys ever have something you wanted to insert in the show in terms of an Easter egg, a callback, or anything like that you suggested, maybe?
We did a lot of South Park references.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that, but no, not really.
It was, the writing staff was about 10, 15 people. It would change a little bit every year. There was just a lot of internal jokes, inside jokes, and, I also think that Michael Jacobs was coming from this world where you could just cast a new character, because television was just airing once, maybe a rerun, and then no one would ever see it again. So I think he was sort of thinking in much more like, oh, we could just keep telling the story and revising the past history. But eventually that started to catch up with us, and the fans started noticing, you have a different little sister. And so I think Michael was just game to play with that and to comment on it. I think one of the, and also there were little jabs. If you remember, there's an episode where Ben's babysitting a kid, and They had moved us to a 9:30 time slot, which was like it really sucked. It made
the death chair
It was the
of
death
that
chair
night.
of that night of
Yeah.
TGIF, and we knew that meant we were on the cutting room floor basically. And so Michael wrote it into the episode. It was like, kid gets acquainted with the universe show or whatever. So there was he was just always making fun of us, making fun of there was just this feedback loop going through. I don't think any of it was very intentional until Girl Meets World. Girl Meets World, Michael was finally like, all right, I'm going to tie together all these loose threads and make, so that's where it became more overt. But I don't think it was ever there was no plan, basically. It was never planned.
I also think, writers, when they're sitting in a room, like we were doing 21 to 24, 25 episodes in a season, and they work their tails off. Like, there were times that they would come in the next day in the exact same clothes because they had been there overnight and, writing these episodes that they obviously took very seriously. And sometimes you just get kind of slap happy in a room and you start thinking things are funny and you're like, let's leave it in there. And
3 a.m. jokes. They call
3 a.m. jokes that then, people point out and they go, wonder what this means. It's like, oh, now we got to come up with a meaning instead of just it was 3 a.m. and exactly, and we were tired. But those are the moments that people will remember. And sometimes it's just because they were just having a good time. They didn't think anybody would notice.
Thank you. Great
Also,
question.
oh,
Go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say that not just Easter eggs, but like one of the things that I appreciated about Boy Meets World was that, the writers were kind of a certain sect of humor. They were very old school, kind of Borscht Belt neurotic humor. And that combined with like a kid's show was always very funny to me. But we were doing scenes and they would have guest stars of people that had not worked in many years, but were, very prominent actors and very prominent comedians. And so it was always like a little crash course in comedy. And I just remember some of the actors that we had on our show.
Like Buddy Hackett and
Soupy Sales and Phyllis Diller and Ted Lange and Bernie Capel from The Love Boat. And it was just always so, I think that was one of the things that like stood out about our show, especially that was a kid's show on TGIF, is that we had these incredible, legends and comedic legends and actors. And Danielle's mom was played by...
Which time?
Peter Tork.
Dad, yeah. That was her dad.
Yeah.
Juliet from Romeo and
I
Juliet.
know.
Olivia Hussey.
Olivia Hussey.
Yes.
So we had some wonderful, wonderful actors that, came and guest starred on our show. So I always appreciated that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Bill has something that I think, do you want to say that about the
Well, what
comedy
was
and
the question?
Quiet. Well, all right. I'm going to let me say it, and then he'll pitch in. What Bill has always done as an actor, if it's a very serious, whatever the part is, if it's a serious part, he always looks for the humor. And if it's a humorous, like this, comedy, he looks for the serious part. But he's always funny. That's going to always come out. But I think one of the reasons that Boy Meets World resonates with all the stories and everything is because it's really very serious, but it's told in a comedic way. And that always gets people more than if you preach to them. And,
Absolutely.
That's what I just said.
That's what.
Yes. Well said.
He just said
we have time for one last question. We're going to go over here. Hi.
Hi, I'm Jordan from New Jersey. Now, given this show took place during arguably your most formative years, adolescence into young adulthood, how much freedom were you given to improvise, or how much would you say that your characters influenced you becoming who you are, or vice versa, you influencing your characters?
That's a good question.
The microphone just hit me. I would say that in terms of the first part of the question, it was about flexibility and how much freedom were you given your characters. These guys can speak to it very well. But I think that as we got more comfortable with our characters, we also were becoming more comfortable with ourselves, because this was during our formative years. But I know that by the 5th, 6th, and 7th seasons of Boy Meets World, we were having so much fun with each other, and we were just kind of, at certain points, kind of throwing caution to the wind. But we were having such a good time comedically. I just remember, I'll always look back on that period. It's just, I was laughing so much when we weren't filming. And I think that really translates well into the show. I was just having such a good time on set every day. And I still do. I just have such a good time with them that, like, oh yeah, we're supposed to be here working as well. And so it was kind of a really wonderful situation to be in. If you can be a part of a show like that, you're really lucky.
When I think about the time on Boy Meets World, Topanga obviously really cared about getting straight A's, and she was very competitive, and she, was all of these amazing, very strong, she had all these strong characteristics, and I always had a strong personality, but I was not trying to get straight A's in school. I just wanted to not have to study that much, go to all the dances, go to the football games, have a good time, and get, some A's, some B's, maybe a C here and there. If I could do that without having to work too hard, I was happy. That was how I was then during that time. And then I went to college later in life. I went to college at 27 years old, and all of a sudden I got 2 B's in all of college, and I cried both times. And I really looked around, and I was like, wait, when did I fully just become Topanga? And then when we went back to Girl Meets World, and I had as Ben had mentioned, having some trepidation about it, I was thinking I don't know, I'm not a mother in my real life. Am I going to remember how to play this character? Am I going to fully understand what she would be as an adult? And I was like, oh no, she's just totally me, 100%. She's exactly who I grew into. So I don't know how much of who I have become was really thoroughly influenced on who I played for those 7 years, but it would seem as though it is a lot.
Yeah.
I would love to say that I was more like early Eric. He really just became me at the end. It was just me. And because, again, I was not part of all the very special stuff, I was really given kind of free reign to, do what I want. I mean, they were like, yeah, we're going to make you plays with squirrels. Okay. It was just, so, yeah. That was...
My mom always says about Will in particular, it was amazing. You'd read a Boy Meets World script, and something would be on the page, and you'd think, well, that's not funny. And then he'd do it, and it was hilarious. So yeah. he really did have, I think, the most freedom.
Very sweet. I did. I was just kind of allowed to play. There were times the writers would come up and go, this isn't a good line, but we have a bet that you can make it funny. Okay. So it was cool, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks to the first part of your question, that we actually didn't improvise that much. On a sitcom, you're constantly rewriting. So you're experimenting all week. So by the time you get in front of the audience to actually shoot something, it's pretty nailed down texturally. But Will, in particular, would surprise everybody with something. I mean, you think about just the Feeny call. It literally just said in the script, fee-he-he-he-ni. And so you think about what he did with that and how far, and then they would just milking it as much as possible. And then the next week it would just say he does the Feeny call. Yeah. And then by the third time it was he does the Feeny call 3 times. Yeah. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and different every time. So that sort of the tonal improvisation or the comedic experimentation that Will brought was always exciting and fun.
That was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah. Well, it has been so awesome to see you guys all together. Thank you guys so much for traveling to Seattle. That was the fastest hour. Give one more big round of applause to the